Good morning, my colleagues, and good morning to the people of Guam. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing has returned from recess. We are still on page 17. Um, we reminder to Mr. Kenga and Ms. Cepeda, you're still under oath. If I'm correct, we're supposed to still have Mr. Art San Agustin from Public Health. I think he's still there somewhere, or there. We will continue the conversation. I know that Senator Reeves, before I get to Senator Teller to close on our motion, I'm going to ask my colleagues, they do have some questions. Um, you know what? Just to be fair, I'm going to go down the list of all the senators so we can wrap this up as hopefully as fast as possible or as soon as possible. Senator Clinton, do you have any questions, sir, to anybody on that's on the list? That's on the Zoom. None. Senator Shelton, Amanda Shelton, Madam Vice Chair, also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning and good morning, colleagues, and to the panel, to Sidious Masi for being here another day. I have a question regarding the amount per pupil and then the cap for each school. We are, hearing lots of testimony from parents and from students now who are wishing to see an increase for the per pupil allocation from $6,000 per pupil to an increased amount that is in Senator Tello's amendment. And I am very supportive for giving more money to each individual pupil, but we've also heard from the different charter schools, the individual charter schools, that they'd like to see an increase in their enrollment amount. So I'd like to hear a consensus from the council. If you'd have to pick one or the other, would you like to see an increase in the per pupil amount? Would you like to see an increase in the cap per school? What is more beneficial to the council at this time as you represent each school?
We'll start with Ms. Vanji, the current chair, and then Jesse can always chime in on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Amanda. For me as the council president and chairperson, and just speaking with all the members of the different charter schools, it would be the per pupil ratio, and then they can work with that. I think that's the concern, is that a lot of them, their concern is if they give us 6150, they can adjust it and they can work around that. But it would be the per pupil, as to oppose that would be something that they can work with.
Okay, so because in the budget bill, it also tells us what the limit is for each school. So even if we up the per pupil amount, the amount that we give for each student, we're not including in the amendment. Senator Tello, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We're not including in the amendment anything about the cap for each school. So even if we were to give them more money and they're saying that they can work with that and work around it to meet their needs, they're not going to be able to accept any more students. So I just want to be very clear that we're not going to need a subsequent amendment for that here.
Well, Senator Amanda, if you're willing to give us, we're willing to. I'm going to say that in all the meetings that we've had, and and Jesse Kenga, our previous chair, can chime in, but in all the talks that we've had in recent months, it has been their concern has been the per pupil.
The cost.
Cost, correct.
Right. I want to make sure it's clear, and Madam Chair, maybe you can comment. Number one, the 6150, how they stretch it, as long as they understand that if it does go up, they're gonna make it work for whatever enrollment, because the in the law, the Budget Act, which gives them their funding, of example like I-Learn, 620. If they enroll any more than that, then that's on them. That's not on the government no more. We're just funding that's the limit of the funding. They understand that.
Yes, they are all fully aware of that.
Okay, so Madam Senator Amanda, did that answer that pretty much?
Yes, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Cepeda.
Okay,
Thank you, Senator.
right, we have Art on St. Augustine on standby, and he needs to run off to a meeting. So, Madam Speaker, do you have any questions on any of the folks that have been invited? Hopefully, Art. Madam Speaker, she was there. Looking for her there. Well, we'll come back to Madam Speaker then. She had to walk away. Was taking care of something. Madam Vice Speaker, Senator Nelson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just listening to yesterday's dialogue was a big help for me. You know, I'd like to commend the author for this amendment. However, you know, once we sessioned, we started to get a lot of emails, you know, almost like we weren't supporting our children and their education. And so, you know, I want the people to know that everyone part was cut. And we've tried to move amendments early on to support the education and also DPHSS. But I think that people also need to be aware of how the charter schools spend their money. We've had many hearings, whether on what the charter schools spend their money on or how is it allocated. So Mr. King, you know, just if you could tell us, out of all the charter schools, what charter school does not have to pay rent? Or Ms. Cepeda?
Thank you, Senator Nelson. If I could have Mr. Jesse Kenga chime in, because I apologize, he would be more, he would be best to answer that question.
Thank you, and thank you to the
Okay, thank you.
Chair and
Yes.
Education for that question. At this time, only Guahan Academy Charter School is the one school that does not have to pay a lease in comparison to the other schools that are in existence. And so that would play a role, I believe, substantially in the type of support and who should receive support if any additional funding is identified. And I think that reiterates what was mentioned yesterday. Sorry.
So the other schools like SIFA and iLearn, their lease is about $2 million, right? So, and this includes contractual services. So this includes their internet. For some of them, it includes I think it's for iLearn, who's really focusing on like technological practices within the classroom. So this includes the iPads, their tablets. And so all of this is inclusive for for them to be able to produce resources for the students. And that's the same thing also for SIFA. And if you look at the differences on campuses, if any of our senators went to visit them, a great disparity between even though GACS does not have to pay for a lease, does not have to pay for their property, where does all their money go to? Where does a huge chunk of their money go to?
Is that a question you'd like us to respond to?
Yes, please.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Speaker. When we reviewed their budget, a large portion of their budget is to provide for their direct instruction contract in order to provide their method of delivery for education. This also includes the cost for personnel. So they provide a number of instructors as well as central office employees such as a board liaison, chief academic officer. I mean, the whole gamut's there to help run their school. So
Okay.
I think what the school has done.
Okay, so that's $2 million. So how does GACS how did GACS even move forward with just contractual costs? How are all the other schools able to keep up with all of their contractual costs? Could it be that sometime earlier, maybe like 6 years ago, they got into this, they committed themselves to a promissory note of $3.6 million?
Yes, that's correct. They did commit their
Could some of that money be going there?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the vice speaker's having a connection problem. Where did she go? She's still there. Madam Vice, you can speak even without having to show your face if that will help
Yep.
your connection, please.
Okay, thank you. So this is my thing. And Jesse, how much does the board get paid at GACS?
I can attest that each member receives a $50 stipend, and we have found that they've been collecting stipends for every meeting they attend, inclusive
And
of
how-
the committee meetings as well as the council meetings or any meeting that they're invited.
Right. And so how much does that usually cost?
I believe I can get that information to you, Vice Speaker. I don't want to speak and provide a wrong number, but I just need a few minutes so we can move on to the next question while I clarify that.
Okay. Thank you. So, and then that we have a school who exceeded enrollment last year. Mr. Chair, what was that school who exceeded the enrollment last year?
Vanjie, can you go ahead and answer that one? If I'm correct, I think it was Ireland. They exceeded the number.
was I Learn
And how
Academy
much,
Charter
Randy,
School.
did they exceed enrollment? Okay, and what is the number amount?
Okay, with iLearning,
Mm-hmm.
740.
And what were they authorized?
They were authorized, okay, let me correct that. I apologize, Senator. They had iLearning at 767 students enrolled, and they
Mm-hmm.
basically were at 740. Budgeted for
No.
740.
No, the Ireland was 620 and their budgeted appropriation is 620 students. It was Guam Academy that got 740. That's the
Okay,
appropriate.
740.
There's not a
Thank you,
restriction
Senator Joe.
on the number of enrollment they have. It's just what the government will appropriate funding for, the number of students.
Right. So how many students did we appropriate for iLearn for?
620, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, and then they went over, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
And then to what, 740?
They
740
went
now. Yeah, now to 761.
Yes,
767.
761.
767.
767. And what was the other school?
The other school was
I think Guam has from 740. I think they're at 790. If I'm correct, Benji.
I'm looking at that, sir. I apologize. I have
I believe, Mr. Chair, if I may, it's 775 currently. Right now, they're capped at 740, but currently their enrollment now is 775.
Okay, thank you, Madam Vice.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So I'm just trying to get the numbers here. And if they were given 6150 for each student last year, it seems that they were operating at close to 5,000. This is just from the top of my head, $5,000 per student. And so this is to educate the people of Guam. So they understand because of the emails that I was getting over the night saying, be fair, you don't care about the children. That's absolutely not true. We need to understand the whole picture here. We need to understand what exactly are they doing with our money, with the people's money, with our dollars. And so I just want the people to want to know that we have been working with the charter schools. Every agency was cut, but we know that they can stay afloat with that $6,000 appropriation. And if you know, the thing is you picked Guam charter schools over DPHSF needs. It's just not right to make this kind of comparison. Right now we're in PCOR 1. And right now we know that the charter schools can still provide an adequate education and a good education, but the charter schools need to be prudent on how they spend the people's money also. The only people we can call in is Vanjie and Jesse Kinga. We don't have the authority to call in the board of trustees from the charter schools and asking them why they pay themselves every time they meet, which probably causes a bill for more than $10,000 annually for meetings, which is ridiculous. And then they go into this contract, they pay a consultant over $70,000, who, by the way, that consultant was the one that entered into this bad contract for them. And so, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit, I'm just a little bit disappointed, because if there's misinformation given to the stakeholders from these schools, they better provide the full picture. These schools better provide the full picture for the parents, rather than just calling on them and giving them something very vague and broad. They better tell them how they're spending their money. They better tell them why they're making thousands of dollars just being a member of the board of trustees. They better tell them why they got into that bad contract, which is why they're still rent-free. They're the only school that's rent-free. And they better tell them why the board is making so much money and why they have to meet and charge the school. And then they better explain the consultant piece before they start sending us letters, before they start telling the parents to send us letters without giving them the full picture.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Vice.
Chair, and
Hello.
thank you, Jesse and Benji.
Yes,
All right.
thank you, Senator Nelson. If I may respond to that, the question that you asked the previous board chairperson. The total amount that was spent from the Board of Trustees board meeting expenditures in previous years was $38,000, and in most recent years it was $20,000. Rest assured that, you know, I will say that the council, this council has working cohesively to trying to change the ways of the past. And so with that said, it's a tough hill to climb, but we're here to kind of change that. And we're very, very, we understand that the goal here is the students and to work with the money that we have to work with. We're very, very much aware of this. And in our board council meetings, I would say with our previous chairperson and the rest of the council, we've reiterated that we want to work cohesively and that the goal is that each school, charter school, run the way it should run and be effective with regards to spending the money.
All right, thank you, Vanjie.
Yeah,
Madam,
thank you, Mr. Chair. $38,000 for the board, just for meetings. How do you meet that many times? $50 a meeting, $38,000? That's my point, that the people of Guam need to know. They need to know how their schools are spending their money. And we've had hearings to show how they're spending their money. That's why we know all this information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
all right, thank you, Madam Vice. Madam Speaker, you were off the net for a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
Chair, you can come back to me, please.
All right. You want me to, I'll come back later for you. Okay. I'm moving down the line. Senator Lee. I'm just going to go down the line, so give everybody a chance to speak. Senator Lee.
Half a day, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask if Art or Tess is still on the line from DPHSS.
Yes, we are.
I think. Yeah,
Hi, good
Miss-
morning. This is in relation to the Taitagui Amendment number 5. And if you haven't received it, the language is to cover the $267,750 reduction in funding for the foster care group home in FY 2021 by adding a new section which amends the FY 2020 budget law, authorizing a continuing appropriation of $800,000 given to DPHSS for the foster care group home in FY 20. And so for Art or Tess, does DPHSS have $800,000 in cash for this emergency shelter that can roll over into the next fiscal year? And Mr. Chair, the reason why I ask is because I want to make sure that we all know it's really important to understand the viability of this carryover provision, because it's really key to ensuring that we aren't decreasing the overall investment to this facility.
All right, all right. Please proceed, Art, if you could.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Senators. With regard to the budget, yes, there is the can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. There is 800,000 that is in our FY 2020. However, the budget that was being used to gauge against the 800,000 is a dated program budget proposal that was prepared in anticipation for last year or this fiscal year. So I asked the program staff to update the budget to reflect the current situation. So the budget that we were discussing yesterday for the program for the foster care group home was 1.2. That has since changed. The budget for the program, if we were to operate this program with the plan of starting on somewhere in October, is $1,481,382,030. The adjustments are made to health and welfare. This is a provision that we have to comply with. That was calculated at $4.48. It's actually $4.54 today. And actually, when the contract is engaged, it will all depend on what the prevailing health and welfare benefit is at the time. It may go up, and so that again will adjust the program. In addition, they made adjustments to, because the quotes were from about a year ago. The quotes for the official vehicles to be leased. Now that we're looking at distance learning, that was also incorporated. So the budget is now at 1.4. There is the 800,000 from 2020. There is 760,000 that is being proposed in the 21 budget at 1.5 or 1,560,000. The difference between that and what the projected program costs, because this is the first year, there's a lot of initial investments, making acquisition of supplies for the rooms, the kitchen, the facility to operate, is 1.481, 382.30. So the available variance would be about $78,617.70. But again, Senators, I know that you all know all too well, overall, the department is not at the level of funding that we had initially proposed, but we are also working towards the level of funding that BBMR had presented to you. And so if we can work with that budget, that would also be suitable at this time. But for this budget, we asked that the $78,617.70, which is the projected amount, be maintained within public health and social services to assist our operations throughout the department and give us the flexibility to reprogram those dollars, 78,000, within other operations of the department that would be beneficial to us protecting the health of our people and our children, our welfare programs and social service programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. And if I could just ask a clarifying question. If you didn't spend the $800,000 from this year, is it still available to roll over to the next fiscal year? Or has the cash from this year not been given to the department yet? Or has it been used somewhere else in your operations? I think it's important for us to key in on this because this amendment number 5 is asking, or it asserts that there is cash from the current budget that can be rolled over. So before we make these initial amendments, I just want to make sure that everything is in line, all the cash that we're and all the appropriations that we're trying to move around from one place to the other, that everything's kind of there already. So again, if you didn't spend the 800,000 this year, is it still available to roll over?
Senator, yes, with the senator, with legislative provision that we can roll over the funds, that would make it available for us in FY 2021. However, of the 800,000, it's still available in the current 2020 department budget. 110,000 is being earmarked for the processing of the IFB, the invitation for bid, to start the process. So in order for us to move forward, we need to identify funding that would give credibility that we are in fact have money behind this intended project. So the 110 has been earmarked for the initial processing of the invitation for bid. It will go through an IFB. Is a process that that's the latest plan that we have. And we are in consultation with GSA. If there is any other procurement option, that would be something they would guide us on. But right now, the department is moving towards the IFB process.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if there's anybody on the line who might be able to answer this, maybe our oversight chair on education, but just going back and forth on this board member stipends, $50 is pretty standard. That's what's paid, across the board. But for it to accumulate to the point of, $20 or even $38,000 in a previous one, I'm just trying to figure out, when the Guam Department of Education board meets, do we have an idea of their stipend, like monthly? Maybe Steve knows, maybe the vice speaker knows.
I think it's about 250 and no more than 2 meetings a month. So no more than 500. I'm just saying this off the bat, but a majority of the time I know the Board of Education try to avoid meeting officially with quorum, so they don't have to spend any money any more than they need to spend.
Right. So, but I know that a number of other boards also, they get $50 per meeting, but they're usually capped at like $100 or $250 for the month to kind of
their budget and understanding their needs for the foster care. One of the things we could consider as a body is language to encourage the 12.5 million that's in the CARES Act. I'm willing to, even though my agency's budget make up 0.8%, not even 1% of the budget, to find 27,000 amongst them to have my 1 out of 10 be there to add up to it. But the question that I have a couple of questions. One, with the charter school, where are we in meeting the maximum enrollment? I know one of the charter schools is new, and so where are we in our numbers at this point?
Chair, I hate to interrupt, Senator, I'm very sorry, but I just wanted to let everyone know, or the Director of Public Health, he has to go to another meeting regarding COVID, and if we could excuse him, Mr. Chair, please.
Yes, Senator Kelly, do you have a question for Art? If not,
not for Public Health.
Thank you.
All right, if we can, if my colleagues would please, I apologize, but we want to get to the list of senators. Does any senators going down have questions for public health? We got Senator Joe Cherlai. Peter, do you have a question for them so we can get with Art now before he has to take off real quick?
If I may, Mr. Chair, Tess Archangel.
I just wanted to find out how many board members do they have with the charter school?
Okay, okay, stand by on that, Peter. I wanted to get a question for Art for public health. I know we have Senator going down the line. We have Senator Therese. I know you've got questions, so if you can make it quick, I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to throw the question. Because if I'm correct, Ms. Archangel will still be here. Am I correct, Art?
Okay.
Okay, so she'll still be here, so we'll still have somebody from public health, so we'll still be safe. Therese, do you have a quick question for Art before he takes off?
Yes, well, you clarified that the amount that you might need for this foster home is more than what was expected yesterday. You said if we leave the 78,000 with public health, that you would be able to use it. Of course, all of this is dependent on authority to carry over from last year and authority to transfer within your budget, which I think you need. Are you able at this time to fund this foster home from any federal sources, federal grants?
I would ask Tess, just 2 points I want to make, Senator, if I may. Tess, if you could respond. I know you oversee the welfare program with our many of our children programs are at. But also, as I step aside, if it's all right with the senators, I have my administrative services officer, Mr. Tommy Tidegly, who's very intimately knowledgeable of the budget. He can stay on the call and either take questions or try to respond to them the best he can. Is that agreeable with the senators, or would you just like me to sign out? Okay, so Tess, I'm going to have Tommy join you. He's right here next to me, and I'm going to go to the Path Check Zoom call. And please, Tess, if you could share information regarding funding, alternate funding for childcare programs, for this program in particular. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to lead.
No, we don't have any. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Art.
No. Good morning, Senator. No, we don't have any alternate funding for this foster care group home. Though we receive CARES Act money, that CARES Act money is earmarked for the office in order for the staff to be able to control the COVID problem.
Okay. Senator Therese, I hate to interrupt, but being that Ms. Archangel is going to be here and we have another individual that is showing on Art's screen. I don't know, Joe Meskin, what was the individual? Were you sworn in?
Yes, sir. He was online with the director yesterday.
Okay. So that being said, and now that we still have DPHS, let me go back to Senator Kelly so we can stay back online with the list, and then we'll still catch up with you, Senator Therese. We'll be able to catch you, Senator Kelly.
So Joyce Masi, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad that DPHSS will still have 2 representatives here that can address our issues. So let me go ahead. I'll get back to the charter school in a minute. But with OFB, with Steve, the director, my calculation is that the difference between 6,150 to 6,000 is about a 9% cut. Is that your calculation as well? Steve?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry, Senator.
Yes, so my calculation is that from 6,150 to 6,000 is about a 9% cut. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I believe it's 2 or 3%, Senator.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like a 6 and a 1. Yeah, that can't be right.
Okay.
So,
I thought you were
don't know what
testing me.
my dad was only a math teacher. May he rest in peace. Okay, so 2 to 3%. And, you know, across the board, I mean, it's just a tough year, probably unprecedentedly tough. I know the cuts that I've seen for what I've been looking at in the budget. Would you say that a 10 to 20% cut per agency is pretty standard from what you have done?
No, Senator.
How would you categorize it?
Yeah, the initial, what we did, again, in order for us to get a starting point of how we implement the across the board, is we took the percentage allocation for all the departments and agencies for 2020 and used that range anywhere from 4.9 to 5%. And that was our starting point of where we increased or decreased the departments as we went along, looking at the requirements and minimal funding level that we can offer them. And that's how we started. I don't think there's any department that had more than an 8, 7, even I think 6 or 7% cut. I think most of them are all in the range of about 4%, maybe 5. I don't think there's any that 5, but definitely about 4% below.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can talk about a few other agencies later that seem to be above the 8%, but you're saying 4 to 5, maybe 8% is pretty standard, that everybody had to just tighten their belts.
When you use the word standard, I'm hoping you're referring to only this fiscal year.
Yes, sorry. So yeah, I started off with that,
Yeah.
just this fiscal year. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so we're looking at it.
8 would be, yeah, I think 8 would be kind of high. I believe the average is about 4%.
And so right now we're looking at a 2 to 3% for the charter schools. And like I said, I'm already willing to give my 10% for the 27,000. So the other question that I had, it's a complicated one, and apparently my math is not at its strongest right now. But so for the charter school, to get back to that, if I could find out where our enrollments are all the schools maxed out, including the newest one, or are there still some schools that are not fully, the enrollment is not fully there yet?
Okay, Senator. Senator, I will say that every other 3 of the charter schools are maxed out. The only one that isn't is Career Tech, and that's the newest. And that's because when they were starting, the COVID happened, and so they had to put a hold on that. They do have numbers, and they have not met their how shall we say, cap, only because their enrollment as of today for Career Tech is 20. And from the last time we spoke with them, they were in the process of getting other enrollments or getting enrollments, and they were increasing. But because of the COVID, everything had to be put on hold. But the 3 other charter schools are filled to their cap.
Okay, yeah, and so what I was trying to do, like, I don't want to hold anybody back with their enrollment, but I was trying to figure out if there's a certain amount that's set aside for them at 6,150. And if we're looking at some students not being there for a number of weeks or a semester or something, if that savings could be used. But I kind of think that's probably a bit too complicated. Steve, is that too complicated to do anything with the savings that we're seeing now of the 80 students being applied to the others at all?
Yeah, what we did, Senator, is bear in mind that Career Tech wasn't operable this fiscal year. They don't. I believe they're going to start in January of next year, somewhere around there. So their initial request was for.
I think I saw a Facebook post for it. They're going to start in the fall.
Okay.
Well, they were hoping
okay,
to.
So the information we
Vanjie
have.
Ms. Kelly,
ahead, Vanjie.
allow the 2 to comment so we can hear them. Thank you.
I'm waiting. So, Ms. Vanjie, are they starting in January or are they starting this fall?
The goal was that their intent was to start in October 1st. That was their goal, and that's still according to Career Tech. Their goal is they're still shooting for October 1st. And with everything going the way they do, we're just hoping that they start, because there seems to be an enrollment, and they seem to be wanting to go this route. The students that with the Career Tech that want to major into skilled work, this seems to be the way to go. But yes, they're hoping to shoot and start and open October 1st.
Just Masi for that. And so, Steve, does it become too complicated or to try to calculate that in a predictive way, or can we consider maybe an amendment that as the savings accrue that they split it amongst themselves on a monthly basis? I don't know. I'm just looking for some solutions here.
Okay, based on the way the allocation was done for the charter school in the bill, it was based on the number of students enrollment per each school. I believe is at 1,000, what's it at? 1,785 students. That was also showing the 100 new students for career tech, and I believe 100 students for Oh, and then we just decreased Shifa by 25, but that was pegged at $6,000 per student. Now, in Senator Tello's proposal amendment is, yeah, it's the same number of students. All she's doing is increasing the appropriation by 267,750. It's kind of ironic because that amount also changes the 6,000 per student to 6,150, which is the current student rate for 2020. So, you know, if the idea is to allow them more students, then it kind of really doesn't tie in with the 267,000. I think the 267,000 amount is just to put them back up to the 6,150. Makes no reference to the number of students, because we're not changing.
Thank you for that. No, mine is not about increasing the number. Mine is saying that because there are 80 students at this point that are not there, for every month that they're not there, can that savings be applied to everybody? Like, let's say they split it up every month that those 80 students aren't there. So we don't want to cut it off. But for every month that those 80 or 70 or 60 students are not there, can that money stay with the charter schools and then just be split amongst them until everybody's enrollment is maxed out?
My understanding of the way the appropriation is doled out to the charter school, it's doled out doing allotments through the allotment schedule. I believe it's monthly. If not monthly, it's quarterly. So what you can do is if you monitor the enrollment per school, and based on the number of students enrolled, you can say by quarter, because I think that's when the report is due. You can kind of figure out how many students are enrolled and versus, and figure out how much the savings is at that point. Whether or not you can identify that savings for anything other than charter school, of course, that would have to take legislation to change that, because you'll be changing the appropriation. But in terms of savings, they can accumulate the savings, I guess, over the course of the school year, and then at the end of the school year, figure out exactly how much they've saved and calculate how many students actually were enrolled for that calendar year or that school year. But to try to identify during the course of the school year, and then thinking that you can transfer that savings somewhere else, that would be kind of difficult to do. Not impossible, but difficult.
Right. So I'm thinking that if it's $6,000 a year and we're doing it by quarters, that it would be 1,500, right? And then if there are 80 students that aren't there, 80 students times 1,500 for the first quarter, and then they could just split amongst themselves the savings.
Well, I mean, you can do that. But you know what it would make cost. I mean, I won't say anything, but if one school is kind of like lagging behind and not meeting their total enrollment, whether or not those monies are available to be transferred to other schools that are exceeding, that's a policy thing. I really wouldn't want to venture around there. All I want to make sure is that whatever amount of students that we authorize in terms of enrollment is what we at least authorize in terms of appropriation to cover the cost of those students.
Okay, and when you say policy level, is that something we could do in this budget bill or something that the council, the Charter Schools Council would set as policy?
I would like to think you would want to get the council's position on it first, and then if whatever the council agrees, that will probably move on and take legislation to change the appropriation levels of the charter schools because it is set by law.
Okay, well, at least food for thought. In a couple of different directions, we can, encourage the governor to use some of that 12.5 million. I can give up 27,000, or we can try to see about this avenue, about the savings being split amongst them. It just has three possible options. So just Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Senator Kelly. I hear somebody in the background there. Their mic's on. Neutralize it. Okay. Senator Peter Terlai, you had some questions for the charter schools and whoever. They're available now.
I was just looking at the expense that was incurred, the 34,000 for the to the board members, but that's okay. I got it now.
All right. Senator Therese Terlai, we're back with you, ma'am. I know you asked a little bit because we had to speed it up for Art, but we do have public health people still there and charter school folks are there. Ma'am, do you have any questions, ma'am, you would like to pose? Need to turn on your unmute.
All right, thank
There
you.
You go.
I wanted to say again, I have no objection to increasing the charter school per pupil amount. I, of course, share the concerns of the vice speaker that were brought up earlier, and I think, we all need to bear in mind that we're talking about a $200,000 shortfall here in this agency, but we have the Department of Education itself with a $10 million cut, the Department of Public Health, $13 million. If we're not able to fully fund our full capacity for Medicaid and CHIP, and those are direct healthcare provisions for the people of Guam, and so I don't think the letters accurately reflect what we're trying to do here. So the only objection, really, I think everybody supports this amendment. The only objection we're having is, where's this money going to come from? Is it going to come from the agency that's supposed to take care of us, and our health, or, someplace else can we find it here? So I guess I wanted, since we're proposing that it's going to come from this foster home, and the director discussed the revised budget figures for the foster, and bear in mind, this is set to go out for IFB, and they're hoping to do this by the end of the fiscal year, but it's not out yet. So we really do not know the cost, because it will depend on the bid, I'm sure, and whatever else is in their budget that they have to provide for. And I know that they are getting assistance in this foster home by donations from the Regalu Foundation and others. And so I acknowledge all of that. But I just want to go back to public health and ask them, do you foresee money in your FY21 budget, as in this bill, that would be able to cover these expenses if we take the money and transfer it out of public health right now? I mean, are you able to cover the additional expenses you might incur for the foster home from your operations budget that's proposed in this bill?
No, we don't have any additional money, Senator, if you can hear me, that we can utilize to cover what is necessary for this group home. We don't have any additional funding.
Is there any other home for children? There's one more shelter for children, isn't there?
Yes, there's Ali Shelter too, but that's always full. That's the maximum that particular shelter can accommodate is only 12. And we always have overflow, more than 12. And we're having difficulty finding relatives as well as foster parents to accommodate them.
Is there a amount that does the IFB cap at a certain amount what we're going to pay the contractor?
No, we don't. We cannot discuss that.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right.
Okay.
Mr. Taitagui, you're the financial officer for the Department of Public Health. Thank you for being here. Do you see any challenges for public health to fund these other shelters that are that you're currently running, in addition to this one?
I don't see any challenges, right? But you know, in terms of like this bid process, we don't know if it's going to actually be what we've budgeted or what we've estimated. So in any event, right, whether or not we move forward, there's a chance that we may not even award a bidder in like through October, November, because that process is a long process that we have to, you know, follow, especially because we're having to work with the AG from start to finish.
All right, but you've been working on this for a while. The director, Tess, said she hoped to get this test, that you said yesterday you hope to get this started by next fiscal year. Could you be more specific?
Yeah, in fact, the staff also is in communication with GSA, and so they're hoping they will be able to put things together by September.
All right.
That's what I gathered from them.
All right, and the budget that the director submitted this morning is for it to be in operations when?
That October.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Colleagues, we're gonna have to move through this pretty quick. We pretty much had a lot of discussion already on this amendment. Steve, you wanted to make a couple comments in reference to the charter school, if you can, please, so we can just wrap this one up. And I'll still ask the other senators if they truly do have questions. Steve?
Yes, Senator. You know, something just comes to mind is that on the charter schools, I believe when they receive their allotments, they take their allotments, and I believe you can consider them as hard cash at that point, and they deposit it into their own operational fund account. And I believe these monies are available continuously and not just limited to the fiscal year. So going back to your concern, Senator Taitano, is that any available or unused funds that they don't expend within the fiscal year, I believe those monies are available the next following year and thereafter. That's my understanding of the way the appropriations to the charter schools are made. I just thought I'd throw that out because you mentioned something about the available balances and stuff like that. I think but the charter schools, what they do is they just use that as they go on to cover operation, not just in the fiscal year, but even future years.
All right. Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Steve. Thank you. Senator Sabina, and we're gonna move through this pretty quickly because we're pretty much, I think, ran out of questions already. Senator Sabina, you have another question?
Just briefly, so what are the chances of perhaps utilizing the schools, DOE schools, at least rent some of those schools where there's empty space for the charter schools? And would that help with the cost?
Your question is what was that? Rent the schools?
Yeah, so one of my suggestions was for use of the underutilized DOE schools to rent their space, perhaps at a much reduced price. What are the chances of that happening so it benefits both entities?
You mean renting the underutilized space of DOE to charter school. That's what your question was, right?
Right. Has that been,
All right.
and just maybe perhaps it's a recommendation more than, but also a question as well to Angie or Jesse.
Well, before we go even to the charter schools, it's a matter of DOE, and we got the oversight of DOE here, Madam Vice. I don't think the charter school have any problem trying to rent from anybody, but it's a matter of only they pursue it through the DOE. Madam Vice, you may want to answer that, Madam Vice Speaker, Oversight Chair of Education.
Right, so the Board of Trustees within the charter schools are the ones that discern on how they operate. The charter school is not a nonprofit organization. So I'm just going to turn off my video so just in case I come. The charter schools are a nonprofit organization. So the government, their primary funding comes from the government. But, you know, as we all know, nonprofit organizations should be able to stand on their own, raise their own money, etc. And so some of these Board of Trustees, they've already entered into contracts with existing structures. And we've seen that with CIFA and iLearn, and also slated to rebuild or to expand some of to expand their school. So these are the decisions of the Board of Trustees. Guahan GAX is the only one that is availing to utilizing the Department of Education buildings basically rent-free. All they're paying for is utilities and their operations. And so really, also the governor has the authority to open up these government buildings for these charter schools, but the charter schools have already expanded. They've already entered into contracts with certain businesses for their operations and the areas that they occupy today. So it's not a matter of just saying, you need to move out of there and go into available buildings within the government, because they're nonprofit organizations.
All right.
And you can't just cut a contract like that.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice. Senator Paris, we need to focus on the amendment. Ma'am, any other questions you have, ma'am?
No further questions.
All right, Senator Torres, and then Senator Tello, I'll come back to you at the end. Before you close, you can ask questions. Senator Torres, and then Senator Moylan, Castro, and then Senator Munia.
Factor into all of this, because that seems to be something that's not discussed at all. And I'm just wondering if you can just discuss it briefly.
All right, on the PPP, my understanding from, maybe the Vice can expand on it, but it's very short. Number one, the funding they got, the $41 million was to share with charter schools and all the schools, private schools and so forth. They weren't given a budget. Nobody was given a budget that would fund anything related to the supplies that are being funded federally. Okay, because you can't supplant. You can supplement, but you can't supplant. So I hope that might have answered that Senator Torres.
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll just move on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you also.
Thank you,
Nancy and Jess.
Senator
And
Moylan?
as a caveat, Mr. Chair, they did not receive money. They're receiving supplies.
That's correct. They're receiving only the supplies, not funding. Senator Moylan. All right, thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the specific amendment, I have no questions. Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Munia. Senator Castro, correction, Senator Castro first.
I support the amendment, Mr. Chairman. No questions or objections.
All right, Senator Munia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question for the charter schools. I know that a lot of the issues, or some of the issues, it seems like what's being brought up now is the issue of paying the stipends, and I'm sure that there's a record of it. So if there is a record of the stipend amounts, the total amount, I mean, wouldn't that be something that could be shared with us so that we can see that there is some record of all of the meetings, and how did it get up to that amount? Is there something that we can take a look at that will kind of justify that amount?
Okay, Senator. Hello, good morning. To
morning.
answer that question, the previous bill, the Board of Trustees, the only Board of Trustees that gets a stipend is GAC, is the Gohan Academy. Every other, the three other charter schools do not receive stipend. Their Board of Trustees have not received stipends or get stipends. And again, I'm going to reiterate that the 38,000 was from previous years, and the 20,000 was of the most recent. We, as a council, do not get involved with the Board of Trustees. Our job as councils is to ensure and follow the laws that we are able to do with regards to the charter schools. And we do, we do have an issue with that, to tell you the truth, spending that kind of money. All I can say is that we've reiterated to all of the charter schools time and time again that the money is very scarce, and that they have to hold their money tight, and that it has to go to things that will assist with regards to the students. So there is documents of it. Senator, if you'd like a copy of that, we'll be more than happy to provide that to you.
Thank you very much, Vanjie. Well, to give us a better understanding of it, because it seems like there is an issue of the amount of money that's being spent per stipend. So I think it'll just give us a better understanding of where the inconsistencies are, if there are any inconsistencies. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Senator Munoz. Senator Reese, you have one question for OFB. Just one quick follow-up, please, and then I'm going to make my
I
comment.
didn't get to ask questions yesterday. Today was my first chance to do that compared to other senators. But my question to OFB is to follow up on what he said earlier about, did I hear you correctly that there's a carryover from FY20 or FY19 for the charter school fund that they could utilize instead of this needing this appropriation?
Yeah, yes, Senator. Let me just clarify. Yeah, what I was referring to is that any monies that are available at the end of the fiscal year could be available to the charter school for them to use the year after, but they would need authorization to use that carryover.
Right. Okay. And do you expect a carryover?
Well, if we're going with the enrollment, based on the number of students, there are maybe one or two schools that have already maxed the cap, so they may not have any carryovers, but for the others that are under the cap, if you use that as a guiding light based on the cost per pupil, they should have some sort of carryover lapse funds available to do that.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Guerrero. Could I test one more question, Mr. Chair, please? While she's here?
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Archangel. So we're kind of now debating, does public health need to keep whatever's left over that's not spent on the foster care, appropriation, and it may be, it's really nominal, 78,000 or 200,000 versus what what your shortfalls are. But could you just talk about foster in particular? What are you looking at for foster care impacts from this budget?
Basically, if we're not able to provide or pay based on the contract with the vendor, we are liable for it. So we can have any legal actions with regards to that. And so what will happen to the children that needs this care?
All right, but I mean, in caring for fosters, in addition to this home and the Ali 2 home, do you have any obligation to them? Part of your budget? Is there any part of your budget that's obligated to pay for fosters that we could use for this home instead?
But there's no other funding that we can use for these group homes. This has to come from local funding. So if we want this project to be accomplished, we need that particular funding. And because of what's the situation now, because of pandemic, we have to take into consideration what are the necessary expenditures, necessary services that we have to provide to these children.
Senator Therese, please unmute so we can hear you. Apologize.
I cannot hear.
Sorry. Just wanted to, I wanted to know whether not giving you the $200,000 is going to impact your ability in other areas of your budget to take care of foster children, or if our budget is sufficient in those areas.
No, the other areas are not sufficient too. Overall, based on our ASO's analysis, we are 14 million below what we propose for the general fund. And I think, Tommy, if you're still in the Zoom, if you can inform the senator with regards to our budget shortfall based on this bill. So, but based on our projection, based on what we discussed, there's no additional funding that we can get from anywhere within public health to support foster care, to support the group homes.
All right. Thank you.
One thing to, I guess, bring to everybody's attention is that we still provide for foster care parents. That in itself is a 100% locally funded. We still have to pay pay these parents to care for the foster kids that are assigned to them, and this includes their allowance for like wardrobe, allowance for
Just get whatever document there. Sorry.
Senator, just stick to the amendment. I understand.
Yes.
I don't want us wandering off into the other areas of their budget.
All right. Well, I understand we're going to talk about their budget later, but we are trying to take money out of their budget right now. And the point is to show that taking even a dime out of public health at this point, they're already short enough that's going to impact their ability to provide the payments that they're currently providing for foster care children, for the current shelters, or for the increased needs of the other shelters, which are for, women in domestic violence and all the other shelters that they run. They run all the shelters on Guam, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Therese. Before I go to Senator Tello, who's going to ask a few questions, I want to make a comment. Number one, yesterday, as we went through all this about charter school and public health, and now with the new budget that's required for the foster care group home, it has changed the numbers have changed. I support charter school. I support their increase, but I can't support out of the backs of public health. Not what the budget has just changed. It has just changed the whole concept. The additional information coming out about charter school. So I just wanted to express that right now, and then we'll see as we move along, and then we see where else we can make the modifications and try to find the additional funding, because I do want to find ways to support charter schools, the increase of their per student. I just want to make sure that's understood. The reason, and it was mentioned earlier, everybody was normally, Steve Guerrero brought it up, OB, when we were cutting everyone, it was like almost 4%. Charter school only got a 3%. If it was 4%, it would have been 5,800. They only got a 3%. There's all kinds of steps being taken so that everybody gets a fair cut or a decent cut. And I just want to express that. Senator Therese, and then after your questions, you're going to close. So hopefully we don't stay too long, and then we can move to vote. All right, ma'am? Senator Tello. I'm sorry, Senator Tello, not Senator Therese. Senator Tello, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Public Health. It's kind of surprising that yesterday we were told that 1.2 million was enough to provide for the foster care in the opening. And then this morning we get this new budget that's upped to close to the full amount that it's ironic. And I looked at some of the increases in the new budget today that was just changed. And some of them have like off-island travel. They increased it $4,000. Certain areas have increased were equipment, clothing, where I know firsthand as a member of the Regalo board that we've raised over $50,000 already for the foster care home. So, you know, I mean, what am I going to do? Argue this with Public Health at this point to try and save the full amount? In the first place, I want to make it clear, Public Health only had $760,000 appropriated to them. My amendment was increasing that to 1.2 to make them whole. And this morning we wake up to, oh no, there's a new budget. Now it's going to increase with leaving only 78,000. And we all know that the charter schools will not be able to increase not increase, make whole what we gave them in FY 2020 budget, 6,150. That's what we gave them. And if anyone is going to tell me that we had made cuts across the board, Steve, I have a question. What DOC, DOL, Parks and Rec, Chamorro Land Trust, Bureau of Women's Affairs, OPA, Medical Referral, have all of these agents had an increase from the 2020 budget comparison to this substituted version? Have all of them been increased from the FY 2020 budget? Yes or no?
Senator, like I said earlier, we started out with a level of reduction across the board.
I'm sorry, Steve, but for the sake of time, have all these areas that I've mentioned increased their budget? Bureau of Women's Affairs, Parks and Rec, DOL, have they all been increased from 2020 budget?
Yes, but you have to understand why the increases were made.
So, Mr. Chair, for any of us to say that none of the other agencies were cut is disingenuous. None of these agencies were cut from the 2020 budget if you do the comparison. Now, if there's an issue with the charter schools on the stipend, as simple as that, so what we're going to do is we're going to jeopardize all the other charter schools because of this one school giving out stipends. Then it's a simple fix. All we do is in this budget, we make an amendment that no funds from the government of Guam to the charter schools shall be spent on stipends. It's as simple as that. That addresses that issue. And I'll be happy to make that amendment myself. So no government of funds will be used for any kind of stipends. So Jesse or Evangie, I really appreciate you being here and advocating for this. Is that something that could be done?
Thank you, Senator Tello. I appreciate that. I was going to recommend that to this body, that if that's the concern, as the council chair, I'm going to say firmly that as the council chair, and I'm going to speak on behalf of all the council members, that we have no problems cutting the stipend with GAC. We have no problems with that. Okay. And I want to say that very clearly, that if that is a concern to alleviate the 38,000 in past spending or 20,000, by all means, cut it.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
I'm going to advocate as a council chairperson that, you know, it's my job to advocate for the charter schools. And I know it's tough. I don't envy any of you. I don't envy any of you to make this tough decision. And but I'm going to stand firm in that if we can take the 1,650, then I'm going to take that as a council chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Benji. And I know you're having it hard with all the other schools asking for the increase on the cap, you know, to lift the cap in some areas, and appreciate that. So Tom of Public Health, Tom, you mentioned earlier about going after an RFP and the probability considering the COVID situation that we're in. Can you again say what said earlier about the probability of trying to get this RFP in place. What is the chances?
When we go through this IFP process, initially we turn in our requisition, then we begin to work with GSA and the AG. Because the agreement falls within that threshold, over that threshold of $500,000, it's going to require, because if we do this long term, it's going to cost over $500,000, right? Or even for just the 1 year. That process has to be followed or guided by the AG from start to finish. So as they look over what specifications they have for the facility or for the operation, it may take. There's no telling how long it's going to take the AG. We all know that the AG right now they're closed, right? With exception to essential staff that I guess he deems essential, but they're not there, full time, I guess, throughout this period anyways, So that's all I'm saying is it's going to take time for them to review the specs, bring it back to GSA, tell them what's wrong with the specs or make any corrections, and then it goes back and forth. And then when they finally announce the IFP, they're still required to do certain timelines, in order for them to even get, open the bids. So, and then even after they open the bids, there's like a 10-day period to notify all the prospective bidders, right, of the potential work.
And in your experience, it has taken sometimes almost 6 to 7 months, and that's in normal circumstances. That's in normal circumstances.
Even if we expedite it, I've seen them where it can take them like a month and a half, at least. But
with the COVID situation, it could take a little bit longer.
Could, yes.
Thank you so much, Tommy, for that. Mr. Chair, if I may, I think everybody's waiting for me to close on this amendment. So if you give me the opportunity, I'd like to close on this amendment.
Yes, please do close. So we can move along.
And my colleagues, we have an opportunity here to take care of two things: the foster care children and the charter school students as well. And who knows? Maybe some of those foster care children go to charter schools. That could be something to think about. But I would like to thank all those who participated in this discussion. And I want to first say that the foster care home building was never in jeopardy or the threat of paying back federal government. And I'm confident that the foster care home will meet its goal. Between public health and the Regalu Foundation, especially the Regalu Foundation, who have advocated for this home to ensure this home is up and running. And for the record, I'm a board member of the Regalu Foundation. So if there's anybody who wants to see this foster care get up and running, it's definitely me. I've been working so hard to try and get the facilities up, and we've been working with the Lieutenant Governor to make this happen. So secondly, and most importantly, these amendments are not taking away funding from public health, but instead instead of giving them $760,453, these amendments now give them $1.2 million in funding. And in fact, it's $1.2,092,703, which is more than what was budgeted in yesterday's budget that they gave us. And I'm pretty sure that even with that amount, they're not going to be able to spend all of it. Now, you're looking at increases in travel. You're looking at increases in products where they know that the Regalu Foundation has provided beds, stoves, refrigerators, playground equipment. And look at the equipment section. They took it from $72,500 to $152,500. I know the numbers because I sit on the Regalu board. So we are not taking away from public health. We're giving them more money. And these amendments show that. With regards to charter school, with the tens of millions of dollars we pour into Guam Department of Education every year, I urge my colleagues to take a moment to consider whether recent investments in charter schools have resulted in something positive for our children and their families and taxpayers. For fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019 and 2020, Guam taxpayers spent just $8 million one year, $10 million the other, and $10 million respectively to fund charter schools. As a result, on their investment, students from the Guahan Academy Charter School, for an example, are testing closer, if not exceeding, national benchmark in English, reading, and math, as noted in the information I provided to you by the evaluator, Dr. Velma Sablan. The charter schools model is working, as our students are demonstrating exceptionally proficiency in core subjects, which are critical to their success in school and beyond classrooms. I'm sure we've all been receiving emails such as, that was discussed on the amendment. And it's good to know that the public is watching how we are working, how we're providing, how we're working toward their taxes being spent. But there was this one letter that really touched my heart. And it was so it's short, so please just bear with me. It says, "Dear Senators, why do you think charter schools children are different from other public school children? Do they deserve less money per pupil just because their parents chose to send their kids to a charter school? Please enlighten me, because my kids deserve the same amount from the government as any other public school child. Will I pay less taxes if my child goes to the charter school?" My colleagues, I ask you to please support this slight appropriation for our charter school students. This slight appropriation of only $150 of each student, which will make a difference and will affect the lives of 1,785 students and their families. Thank you, and please consider that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Telo-Tadegui. We'll now have a roll call, and we move to vote on the amendment. The amendment is of to increase. I think we'll do one amendment at a time, which is it's the specifically page 17, line 7. Which is the increase of the appropriation from 10.710 to 10.977750. All right, does everybody understand what we're going to be voting on? Senator Therese?
Yes, I just want to clarify, because the source of funding for this has been stated to be the Department of Public Health's budget. And so I want to make it very clear, are we voting right now to take it out of public health? Or is it possible that when we get to public health, that part might not pass?
No, I have feelings, Senator Therese, if this doesn't pass, it doesn't impact at all public health.
I'm asking about the reverse. If it passes, does it impact public health automatically? Or are we going to continue to search for another place for funding?
That's correct. It's still open for that. My colleagues, we're going to work on one amendment, and I agree with you, Senator Therese. Does it impact public health? No, it doesn't. Until we get to public health, and then that's when the amendment will be addressed. It may not address it. Let's just see first if it'll even pass.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Stand by, Senator Tello. Steve?
Yes, Senator, may I please just make a comment now? Is that I think if we are going to increase any appropriation level within the bill going forward, in order for that measure to happen, you must identify a fund source to correlate with the increase. If you do not do it as you go on, it is going to be chaotic at the end, and we may not have sufficient funding to cover all the amendments made in the bill. So I strongly advise that as we move forward, that all changes made in the bill, page by page, be done to identify both the funding source and the increases or decreases as we go along. We cannot go from page 17 to page 56. It'll be very hard.
Got it. Okay, understood. Then exactly what Senator Therese asked is if this amendment of page 17, line 8, actually, which is 10.7, we have to reflect that the funding is coming from page 38 on line 12. All right?
Chair, if I may, Mr. Chair, there is nothing in the rules stating that we have to make that decision on the funding source at this point. We're just addressing one simple amendment that would increase, and I thank you, Senator Regine, for agreeing, that it's just an increase in this one particular, okay, well, never mind, scratch that, but it's just this one increase in the budget to increase from 10,710,000 to 10,977. And then if you move further down, the other amendment is to take it from 6,000 to 6,150. Now, if we can hold off, and I'm asking my colleagues, if we could just hold off on the appropriation when we get to public health, or when we get to an area even before public health, to find that funding, then it's an opportunity for us to find that funding. But if we can all agree that the charter schools need to be made whole again, that's what I'm asking.
All right, thank you, Senator Tello. But if you remember correctly, the rules was pay as we go rules. Senator Therese is correct. We need to make sure we identify the source of where the money's coming from, exactly what Steve brought up. So we're not running around trying to figure out where we're going to get the money. So
okay,
that being said,
I will reserve the fact that later on in the event, Mr. Chair, since we're on this page right now, that if funding is coming available, that we reserve this section on page 17 to increase any kind of funding, if there's any funding available later on. That I reserve that.
So you want to bookmark then your amendment then at this point?
Yes, in the event this bill does not pass, or this amendments do not pass to help the charter schools, then.
All right, okay, understood. We can bookmark it, that if you find money anywhere throughout the budget, you identify that if this amendment doesn't pass. So that kind of clears up the air that if it doesn't pass, because we do have to identify that the 10 point, the increase on the amendment of page 17, line 8 would have to come right now from the foster care group. We need to have that understanding. That's the pay-as-you-go rule.
The figure per pupil.
So you want to go to page 38 amendment first, Senator Clinton? Is that what you're asking for?
Otherwise, if we vote and we pass this amendment, we are appropriating phantom revenues. There's no revenues to back this increase.
Okay, so
by first carrying over the appropriation, if that passes. So this is a complicated series of amendments, which is it's unique, but I mean, this is the way it would have to work. We would have to identify the funding first by continuing the 800,000 appropriation. Then we have to deappropriate the amount that's needed to increase this amount here.
Okay, so we're going to go to amendment number 5 first. All right, Senator Therese?
Maybe it's fairer to do that amendment, Mr. Chair, when we are allowed to discuss the entire public health budget, because we are jumping around and taking out of public health without even allowing them to discuss their entire budget.
Okay, but we're going to move to amendment 5, so that will address that, and it'll be done. It'll identify the exactly what my vice chair asked. That
Mr. Chair, on a point of information or an inquiry based on the amendments on hand, did we discuss all the amendments that you're taking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or what exact amendment are we doing? Because from what I heard, the author of the amendment is asking about the increase on page 17, if I'm not mistaken, that we cannot go to 5 and not finish 1 when a motion is already said, and that I thought that was an engagement, Mr.
Understood, Madam Speaker, but at the same token, I've identified that the way we were gonna do any movement of any money is to identify the source of funding. That was identified, it's on page 38. And exactly what my advice asks is that we first take that money, de-appropriate it, and identify that it's gonna go to the amendment number 1. See, unfortunately, we have to go and find the source of funding and where it's gonna go. And if amendment 5 fails, everything else will fail automatically, because then there won't be no need for any of the other amendments.
Mr. Chair.
All right,
if I-
Madam Speaker.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if we can do the amendment that carries over the 800,000 from 2020 first to public health to give them the 800,000, because that makes the difference altogether. If we start with that amendment, authorizing the carryover of 800 first, if we can do that amendment first, Mr. Chair, and then we go into the other amendments down the road, as Senator Rigel mentioned, that would be the best one.
All right, that does it. And what amendment number is that? Is that amendment number 6?
That is amendment number, if you go into the Google Drive under all the amendments, you'll find it under the carryover, to allow the carryover.
Line 16, page 38.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Kelly, and just as long as related to what we're identifying on how to move the amendments, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So my understanding of the pay-as-you-go falls in line with what Senator Therese was saying, is that when you get to the part where you're going to remove the money from, when you get to that source and you have a chance to hear from them or their oversight chair, that's when you can then go in and shift it elsewhere. So to me, pay as you go, the funding source when you're on that page, not necessarily earlier, but it needs to be when we're on that page and we're in that agency that we may or may not be taking money from. And then you can do things with the money, not, from every direction and referring to something that comes later on, and we haven't necessarily heard the whole big picture from that agency yet.
Understood, Senator Kelly, but we have identified a source of funding. We need to first, number one, like my vice chair mentioned, we start with first, rolling over the 800,000 is one. Second one is to de-appropriate the money that's in page 38 on where it's gonna go. And then we go back to charter school. We're showing the flow of where the money's coming from, where it came from, and where it's going. All right?
Well, that's not how we did it. If I can just mention, that's not how we did it yesterday when I was on page 5 and we didn't stop and go all the way to page 81 and then come all the way back. Like, to me, that's, the back and forth.
When you were on page 5, you identified an increase and you wanted to identify a decrease. Am I correct?
Right. I mean, I talked about the federal monies, and the federal monies don't change, but it was asked where that money is coming from. So we didn't all just shift to page 81 and talk about that and pass those amendments and then come back to page 5. So I'm saying, to me, it makes sense, pay as you go. You wait till you get to that funding source to be able to hear their entire picture, and then you have it go wherever it needs to. That's how I understand pay by go, and that seemed to be what we were doing yesterday.
All right, understood. My vice, could you comment on that one so we can just clear it up and we can just move on? Because I prefer to just identify a public health, move the money over the 800,000, and then de-appropriate the money for where it's gonna go to charter school, and then we can move from there. Because until something passes, nothing's gonna happen anyway. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and begin with the amendment, Senator Tello, that identifies the transfer or the rolling over of the 800,000 into public health first.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and that's on line 16, page 38, which is located on the chat right now as we speak. And basically, Mr. Chair, what this amendment will do is on section 17, foster care group, the sum of 800,000 is appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Public Health and Social Service for the operation of the Gumumasi Sister Mary Bridget Paris RSM Group Child Care Home. And here's the amendment. Notwithstanding any other provisions of law, this appropriation shall continue to be available until September 30, 2021, and is not subject to transfer or use of any other purposes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, roll call, Joe, so we can move that money and be done with that. Senator Therese, do you have a question on moving that money?
No, I'd like to discuss the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, why don't we take a quick recess, okay, so we can regroup here and we make sure we're back on track. Recess there for about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, thank you for your patience, my colleagues. I spoke to legal, and the recommendation of legal is number one. As Senator Tello did ask to bookmark page 7, the charter school, which is page 17, in the event it fails. Legal states that number one, we have to, if we're going to work on the amendment, the only amendment we can pass or address is going to be the amendment of page 17, line 8, the 10,710,000, 10,710,000 to 10,900,000. That would be the only one, but and if we're going to discuss anything with public health by legal, is that when we get to public health, then we'll address the rollover and the deduction, and then we can, because of the bookmark, we can go backwards then to the charter school and address that one. Senator Tello, do you have any objection to that? Okay, Madam Speaker, you have a statement, ma'am? And I know you wanted to address the one amendment that was on the floor. You need to unmute, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification of the record, because we spent a long time on the one amendment. So can you share with me, based on the 5 different amendments, which was the amendment that we are talking about that is bookmarked, so all of our colleagues know which amendment is being bookmarked? Because each amendment has to go through its discussion process. So if you can just have clerk or whoever just read the amendment that was bookmarked that we were supposed to vote on, that we had discussion on the last 2 days, just to be clear.
Yes, ma'am. Joe, if you could please read the amendment that we're going to bookmark so that we can move on.
So,
Joe, stand by, Senator Tello. Joe Mesgan. Joe?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
If the clerk is there, Mr. Chair, we can ask the clerk, and the clerk's not there.
Yes, Joe, if you can speak, because I know you have the clerk supporting what you guys are doing. So can you just identify which amendment we've been working on?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We are also communicating with the clerk's office, who has been very gracious in assisting us through these proceedings. At this time,
you're coming in broken up, Joe.
We understand, Senator Tello.
You're coming in broken up, Joe.
Okay. All right. The request is that the procedure should be that we withdraw Senator remaining amendments that she has proffered regarding public health at that time when we get to.
Okay, Joe, you came in broken up. I don't know if everybody caught what you were stating. It's basically amendment number 1, which is page 17 amendment on the 10,710,000 to change that number. Am I correct? Joe?
Mr. Chair, I don't think that was the amendment, sir.
What was the amendment? We were working on the 10.7, the 10 million, and then we also discussed the 6,000 to 6,150, and we also were discussing the issues with public health, which is to reduce it and to show the rollover. And legal has advised me, do not go further in the discussion on public health, and if possible, bookmark this.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes,
if you
please.
just address the amendment, that the first amendment that was being discussed, and direct all our colleagues to which amendment, so whatever the code is that's on the Google Drive, to see if that is the amendment we are working on. because she has 5 amendments, and I want to make sure, and I want to give the opportunity for the author to make sure that we're working on the right amendment.
Right,
So,
and will the author please state, if I'm correct, the amendment that we've been working on is the line 7, page 17, to amend section 2, part 2 of chapter 2 of the bill. Am I correct? Am I reading it so far correctly? And it's section 2, appropriates the sum of 10,710,000 to striking that out, and it'll be 10,977,750 is appropriate to the Guam Academy Charter School. Am I correct, Senator Tello, the author? That's been the main amendment we've been discussing.
Mr. Chair, if I may, when we left for recess, we were on another amendment, which is line 16, page 38. And I asked that we bookmark this page 17, which is a charter school. So we were on the amendment to vote on the amendment when we took a break to discuss line 16, page 39, to take the 800,000 to Department of Public Health and Social Services for the carryover. So
understood.
Now you mentioned that, and then I'm not quite understanding, sir, when you mentioned that, okay, we're going to scratch that amendment that does the carryover because legal said that we need to address page 17 where we were discussing on an amendment earlier. And then it was brought up that from Senator Rigel that we should at least do the appropriation first, which makes sense, and then go back. So tell me, Mr. Chair, I mean, you're the committee chair. Tell us what you want to do. Do we go, just tell us which one you want to do. And I'm sure that.
Okay. All right. I'll make it very clear. From legal, they've advised me to discuss the issue on page 38, which is public health, is when we get to public health, then we'll discuss the rollover funds and the de-appropriation. So in other words, I'm asking that we bookmark your page 17, your amendment, or you withdraw it. You decide, withdraw the amendment and we'll bookmark that page 17. And then when we get to that public health, then as we're discussing their whole budget and the rollover, Senator Reeves will be able to discuss everything about public health, and then we can address everything we need to address in public health. Are we okay with that, Senator Tello?
Okay, so if I'm mistaken, Mr. Chair, what you would like me to do is just basically, I'm not withdrawing this amendment, but
Understood.
I would bookmark it, and then when we get to the funding source, then we can go back to make the amendment, which is my amendment, to increase those numbers. I don't have a problem with that either, Mr. Chair. For the sake of moving forward, I have no problem with that. But I will not withdraw my amendment at all. My intention is to increase, to make whole, not increase, but make whole the charter schools. So if that's the case, Mr. Chair, then I would like to hold off on my amendment for now, bookmarking page 17 for future consideration of this body for an amendment. So that would be my stance at this point. Is that okay with everybody?
All right, Madam Speaker, do you have a problem? Do you have an issue with that one? I beg your pardon, Madam Speaker, one more time.
just for consistency's sake, so is there a motion to bookmark? So there's no objections?
Yes.
That's the
I'm
question.
gonna do a roll call, so we'll do a roll call so we can cover those bases. We're gonna bookmark page 17. Joe, do the roll call and let's move along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're coming in broken up. You're coming in broken up, Joe. Joe, you still there? Let's do the quick roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my apologies. I'm having some issues on my end with my.
Let's start.
So on the motion for bookmarking, Chairman San Agustin.
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton.
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munoz Barnes.
Again.
Speaker Munoz-Barnes, aye. Senator Lee.
Ungan.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Teresa Lahi.
Again.
Senator Teresa Lahi, aye. Senator Pito Talahi.
Again.
Senator Pito Talahi, aye. Senator March Taitano.
Again.
Senator March Taitano, aye. Senator Castro.
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moynihan.
Aye.
Senator Moynihan, aye. Senator Munya.
Again.
Senator Munya, aye. Senator Vice Speaker Nelson.
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez.
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres.
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitagui.
Again.
Senator Taitagui, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes.
Thank you. Motion passes. My colleagues, we have another amendment that was proffered by Senator Amanda Shelton. It addresses the stipend issue. Senator Amanda Shelton, if you would please.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we're still following the same procedures, but don't I still have the floor, number one? And number two, wouldn't we have to make a vote on setting aside my amendment? Because it's still up in the air. You know, the amendment, it hasn't ended discussion.
Which amendment are you referring to, ma'am?
The one on page 17, the one we just talked about by bookmarking. So the amendment is still up in the air. So I think we would have to not withdraw the amendment, but to set it aside. Unless the bookmarking does that for us. Then
Yes, it does. It does.
And that being, Mr. Chair, like I mentioned, I've already I still have the floor because there is another amendment that I have on the books, and Joe should have it, and it's up, should be up.
Which one is that one? I hope it's not the same as what Senator Amanda is bringing up, which is an issue on the stipend.
Actually, it is.
Okay, well, Senator Amanda, while we were discussing, she posted it out.
Okay, well then, no, I'll have my colleague go ahead and introduce. I'll just withdraw that one and allow her to work on the stipend amendment. Thank you.
All right,
Mr.
thank you. Thank you. Senator Amanda Shelton, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Taitagui. I think we all had the same intentions as the conversation was going on, and this is a very simple amendment, and it reads suspension of stipends to be added on page 18, line 9 as a new section under Chapter 2 of the bill under the charter schools, and it will be suspension of stipends. No charter school board of trustees member shall receive stipends for FY 2021. So this is a cost-saving measure that we can see maybe 10,000 to 38,000, as we just heard, that's been spent in charter school trustee members' stipends over the last few years. We can see this kind of savings, and hopefully this money can go directly to our students.
Mr. Chair, can I ask for just a short recess, please? Just a short 3 minutes, that's all.
All right, then let's recess for 3 minutes then. Thank you.
Senator Amanda?
All right, thank you, my colleagues, for your patience and for the people of Guam. Senator Amanda Shelton, ma'am, we're at your amendment. If you can just, everybody's coming back on right now. If you can just restate your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, the amendment is on line 9, page 18, to add a new section to chapter 2 of this bill. So it's section, I believe it will come out as section 6. Suspension of stipends. No charter school board of trustees member shall receive stipends for FY 2021. And I just like to remind the body that this is with the consent of the Charter School Council here, who does agree with this. And so I think this is just one of the cost-saving measures we can see in this, at least for this fiscal year, and see a little bit more money go directly to student instruction and student needs.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second out there? I'd like to see a hand wave for a second, please. Thank you, Senator Clinton. That being said, I'm gonna go down the list. I know there is an amendment to that amendment that will come up with Senator Tella, but we'll go down the list first. If anybody have any questions on this one, and then we'll address your amendment. Senator Clinton, do you have any comments you want to make on this amendment? None. We'll skip Senator Shelton. Madam Speaker, ma'am.
I'm okay, Mr. Chair.
You're okay with that one? Okay. Madam Vice Speaker, there you are, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No objections, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee. No objection. Senator Kelly. Any objection or any comments you want to make on that amendment?
No objection.
All right, thank you. Senator Joe Pito Terlai, sir.
No objection, Joe.
Thank you, Pito. Senator Therese Terlai, any objection to that?
No, Mr. Chair, if there's no discussion, can we just go straight to the vote?
Yeah, I was trying to get to that real quick. We're moving along pretty quick. Senator, there is an amendment to it. Senator Sabina Paris, ma'am, you have any objection?
Just like to wait for the amendment to the amendment.
All right, thank you. Senator Taitigui, you're.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Joe, I know it's been sent to you, the amendment. I'm looking online on the chat. I don't see it, but for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and read the amendment to Senator Shelton's amendment. And this again is on line 9, page 18. And basically my amendment starts in right after her section, and then they're supposed to put, I think it's 6 in there. Suspension of stipends, and then my amendment begins, notwithstanding any of the provisions of law, rule, or regulation, no charter school board of trustee members shall receive stipends. And then you cross out for 2021. This is just period, no stipends. So that's what the amendment entails. There it is, if you can see it, if you download it. If you click it open on the chat, you'll find my amendment to the amendment. So
All
it's
right.
very simple. Oops, no.
Okay,
That's not the one.
well, I can see a restriction on the use of general fund appropriation for stipends.
Yeah, it's the one that further up. That doesn't look like the one.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, but it basically says that I'm just adding in after the section that starts off suspension of stipends, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, then no charter school board of trustee members shall receive stipends. And then we cross out for FY 2021. I think the intention is to move forward with not providing stipends whatsoever. That's my amendment.
All right. I will start again from the beginning, and we'll just go through this pretty quick. I think everybody's generally in support of this. Senator Clinton, any objection to that amendment?
No objection.
No objection. Senator Amanda Shelton, ma'am?
No objection.
No objection. Madam Speaker?
No objection.
No objection. Madam Vice Speaker?
Mr. Chair, I just have a concern with crossing out fiscal year 2021. I think that, Department of Education board does receive a stipend. And so I never had an issue with board members receiving stipends. And so I just think that if we're looking for cost saving measures today, I think that would be prudent to do it today. So I'm not necessarily in the support of this amendment to the amendment.
All right, thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you.
Mr. Chair, I just have a point of information.
Yes,
I
Senator
just
Amanda.
like to differentiate between the Guam Department of Education Board and the boards that we're speaking about in this amendment. This is for the individual boards of trustees for the individual charter schools. This is not the charter school, the Guam Charter School Council. So we are not touching the Guam Charter School Council, which is the equivalent of the Guam Department of Education Board. This is for individual school boards.
All right, thank you.
And I don't have a problem with keeping the FY 2021 in, because as the Vice Speaker said, this is an amendment to see cost saving measures this year. And so if it's something that we want to revisit in the next year's budget, I'm fine with that.
All right, okay, Madam Vice Speaker.
Yes, that's correct. But for situational awareness, all the Board of Trustees act as board policy members as well. So if they want to implement a change in the direction of the charter school, that's what the Board of Trustees do as well. From what I know, even the Board of Trustees take part in the hiring process. I don't even know if that's even the right thing for them to do, but that is what they're doing within their scope.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee, do you have any objection to this amendment?
Thank you,
Proffered
Mr.
by
Chair.
Senator
I certainly share some of those concerns and would kind of withhold my support, because we did have a conversation with the charter school board members. Previously, we asked them about in that discussion, it was specifically for this year. And I understand specifically for this year. So maybe if we're gonna discuss expanding it, we can have that be a separate bill and just have that be a separate discussion, allow those board members and members of the public to also weigh in on a change that's kind of longer reaching. So
all right.
I also have some concerns with that.
Mr.
All
Chair,
right,
if I may, Mr. Chair, to make it go smooth, and I know we already started the voting, then I'll be happy to remove the FY 2021, I mean, not unstrike the FY 2021 and maintain it, if that would move things forward.
all right, thank you.
So let's just, so my amendment to the amendment would be what I mentioned earlier, and then not striking out the 2021. So if we want to start from the beginning on the voting for any concerns, then I have no problem with that.
Okay, it's strictly for 2021 then. It's all you're focusing on.
That's it. Yeah.
All right, I'm not gonna go back. I think Senator Clinton, and you have any objection to that? We're just gonna keep it 2021, okay? Senator Amanda, it's still the same line with what you had. Madam Speaker, still in the same line, ma'am? I'm looking for you, ma'am. Okay, Madam Vice Speaker?
No issue, Mr. Chair, if we are in keeping the FY 2021.
Yes, thank you. Senator Lee? We're good? Okay, Senator Kelly?
Mr. Chair. I'm just pointing out, I think it's good to keep it at this year, so I appreciate the withdrawal of that. And maybe the oversight chair or someone would like to have a conversation after all of this with the council board to see if they're interested in just a cap in the future, but
Understood.
no objections at this point.
All right, Senator Peter Tulay, again, the same question, except keeping the 21.
Joe, we're good. We're good.
All right, Senator Therese Tulay, ma'am.
No discussion.
All right, thank you. Senator Sabina Pérez, you've heard the amendment.
No objections with the change.
All right, thank you. Senator Torres, ma'am.
No comment.
No comment. Okay, Senator Moylan.
I'm in favor.
All right, thank you. Senator Castro.
Also go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Luis Muñoz, ma'am.
No objection.
All right, and on my part, I'm in support of this. Let's keep it on 21. Okay, that being said, we'll do a roll call. Joe, let's do a roll call on the amendment as also amended by Senator Tello. Senator Tello, I don't think you need to close on this. All right, okay, Joe, let's do a roll call. Let's get this voted on.
Mr. Chair, just so that I'm clear, this is on the amendment as amended or the amendment to the amendment?
Amendment to the amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the Taitagui amendment to the amendment.
Can you go and
Chairman
read the
Sinal-
amendment out so that we all hear what the amendment is so we know what we're voting on?
Just give us a second, sir. We're just finalizing that amendment to ensure that it's accurate.
All right, please. Thank you.
The last amendment we received from Senator Taitagui is reading line 9, page 18, to add a new section to chapter 2 of the bill to read section blank, suspension of stipends. No charter school board of trustees members shall receive stipends for FY 2021.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Joe, I sent to you via the amendment, the one that I spoke on earlier, which says section, and then it's open, suspension of stipends, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, no charter school board of trustee members shall receive stipends. And then I crossed out FY 2021, but I've incorporated it back in. So it's just a slight change. So I sent it to you via WhatsApp. Do you see it?
Yes, Senator, I do see it now.
Okay, thank you. So that's how it would read, but you would incorporate FY 2021.
You have that, Joe, and go ahead and read it out one more time so that everybody
Okay.
understands what they're voting on.
This is on line 9, page 18, amending the Shelton Amendment to read by adding a new section to chapter 2 of the bill, section blank, suspension of stipends, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, no charter school board of trustees members shall receive stipends for FY 2021.
All right. My folks, that's the amendment. Take the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the amendment to the amendment, Chairman San Agustin.
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chairman Ruggiero.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Ruggiero, aye. Vice Chairman Shelton.
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Munoz Barnes.
Okay.
Speaker Munoz Barnes, aye. Senator Lee.
Hungan.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Talahi.
Again.
Senator Therese Talahi, aye. Senator Pino Talahi.
Again.
Senator Pino Talahi, aye. Senator Marsh Taitano.
Again.
Senator Marsh Taitano, aye. Senator Castro.
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan.
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Munoz.
Again.
Senator Munoz, aye. Vice Speaker Nelson.
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez.
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres.
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Taitagui.
Again.
Senator Taitagui, aye. Mr. Chair, you have 15 ayes on the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, my colleagues. The motion passes, the amendment passes. It will be, now we move back to the amendment as amended. Do we need any discussion on that one? And we'll begin with Senator Clint Rigel. None. We'll skip Senator Amanda. Senator Amanda, you want to discuss anything on your amendment? None at all. Okay, Madam Speaker.
No discussion.
All right, Senator, Madam Vice Speaker, ma'am.
No objection, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Lee? None. Senator Kelly?
No objection.
Thank you. Senator Peter Terlai?
No objection, Joe.
Thank you. Senator Therese Terlai?
No objection, Mr. Chair. I would just ask if we could solicit if there is any discussion, go to those people and then we can get to the vote.
Got it. I'm trying to move as fast as I can. Just reading off the names real quick. Senator Sabina Barris?
No objection.
All right, thank you. Senator Titlegy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to thank the author of this amendment. As I mentioned earlier in the conversation about stipends and just making a simple amendment to the budget bill. So I'm glad that the good senator of this author jumped to that making that amendment. So I appreciate it and then look forward to maybe solidifying this and making it ongoing.
All right, thank you, Senator Tello. Senator
I-
Torres? Okay, go ahead. I apologize. Thank you. Senator Torres?
No comment, thank you.
All right, Senator Moylan?
Aye.
Senator Castro?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Muñoz?
No comment.
All right, Joe, let's wrap up. Let's do the vote. Do the
Sir,
roll call, please.
Mr. Chair, if I may just close.
Oh,
really
please.
quickly.
All right,
I'd like
then.
to,
All right,
thank
okay, then.
my colleague, Senator Tello, for her input on this amendment. If I can ask the clerks in the committee to please add her as a co-sponsor to this amendment. That's all.
All right, thank you. Senator Joe Mesgun, can you go ahead and let's do the roll call and just read off the amendment so we have it clear exactly what we voted on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the amendment as amended, it reads on line 9, page 18, section blank, suspension of stipends, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule or regulation, no charter school board of trustees member shall receive stipends for FY 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll
On the
call,
vote,
please.
Chairman San Agustin?
Aye.
Chairman San Agustin, aye. Vice Chair Rigel?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rigel, aye. Vice Chair Shelton?
Again.
Vice Chair Shelton, aye. Speaker Muñoz Barnes?
Okay.
Speaker Muñoz Barnes, aye. Senator Lee?
Again.
Senator Lee, aye. Senator Therese Terlahi?
Okay.
Senator Therese Terlahi, aye. Senator Peter Terlahi?
Again.
Senator Peter Terlahi, aye. Senator March Taitano?
Again.
Senator March Taitano, aye. Senator Castro?
Again.
Senator Castro, aye. Senator Moylan?
Aye.
Senator Moylan, aye. Senator Muñoz?
Again.
Senator Muñoz, aye. Senator Vice Speaker Nelson?
Again.
Vice Speaker Nelson, aye. Senator Perez?
Again.
Senator Perez, aye. Senator Torres?
Again.
Senator Torres, aye. Senator Titlegy?
Again.
Senator Titlegy, aye. Mr. Chair, the amendment as amended received 15 aye votes.
All right, thank you, my colleagues. That amendment has passed. We will now take a recess. We'll see you all back at 1:30. Thank you, and thank you for the charter school council that have participated. Thank you, Vanjie, and thank you, Jesse.
Here, I have an amendment to this section. If you can ask I don't know if you need the board members to come back, but it's.
Okay. Did you want them to come back, and then we'll call them back? Do you
Up to
believe?
you.
Vanjie, just come back, and Jesse, just in case. Just in case, okay? Thank you, Senator Therese. We'll see you all back at 1:30. Thank you.